So I was doing some digging down here in the catacombs, and I was like, you know what, I need to make a fucking video. And I pulled out four movies that are classics. They're all on tape, and they all have certain special meaning to me. These kind of movies define me as a cinema fan. So, without further ado, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly from 1966. This movie is such a fucking masterpiece, in my opinion. Like, and I think in a lot of people's opinion, they can agree that the score alone of this film is legendary. It's iconic. Uh, Even people that haven't seen the film know the score just from popular culture and whatnot. You have Eli Wallach as Tuco, who plays this like deranged fucking, almost like one of those characters like a Quint from Jaws, where you almost want to sit down at a bar with this guy, and as long as he's on your side, it's all good. But he has an amazing scene where he goes into a gun shop. It's actually like a little general store, and he puts together a gun essentially, and he's listening for like the clicks and all that kind of shit, and finally makes the gun the way he wants it, and then he puts a bullet into it. And in the same fashion as Terminator, I guess you could say Terminator owes a little bit to Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because Arnold Schwarzenegger famously goes to a gun shop, puts a fucking bullet inside of a gun, and kills the guy. Whereas in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he spares the guy's life, but he takes everything else essentially, and it's awesome. That's probably my favorite scene with Tuco. My favorite scene with Angel Eyes is definitely the beginning, where he goes to the farmer's house and sits down, eats the family's meal, and spoiler alert, kills the husband, kills one of the sons, and just splits. And it's such a cold, hard fucking son of a bitch move to make, and I love it. I love every minute of it. With Blondie, Clint Eastwood's character, I think he's got so many scenes throughout it, it's hard for me to pick one out, but I really love how he has these scams set up, first with Tuco and then with this guy named Shorty, who we don't really get to know much about, where they go around from town to town where there's a bounty on the guy's head, and they turn him in, get the money, and then Clint Eastwood essentially saves his ass at the last second, and they get scot-free, split the cash. And it's basically Tuco kind of gets a little greedy, and I think Blondie sees that coming, and it's such a crazy friendship that they have, and they both like basically almost let each other get killed, but it's almost like good spirited fun, almost like they are like brothers in a way, if that makes sense. But I think The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you can't fail. Like, even okay, so the crazy thing to mention is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a third installment of a trilogy. You got Fistful of Dollars for a few dollars more, and then you have The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And little fun fact here: Fistful of Dollars is based on Yojimbo, which is an Akira Kurosawa film, and I believe that is based on source material called Red Harvest. I did a little bit of research into this, and I've actually only seen a little bit of Yojimbo, and I have not seen Seven Samurai fully conscious the whole time. So I got Seven Samurai. I got a burnt copy of Yojimbo. So in 2020, I hope to watch a lot of classics and get caught up on some killer stuff. But I think that you don't need to have seen Fistful of Dollars or A Few Dollars More to enjoy this film. You can go in blind, enjoy it. It's fucking great. It's a double tape edition right here, but I don't think movies always needed to be double tape, but I think it's a quality issue. Like, once it gets too long, they kind of have to record it in different mode, because when you're recording tapes, I know this is like technical jargon to some, but there's different speeds you can record at, which will dictate how much video you can fit within a tape. And so if you're if you're gonna put a movie in on Netflix and you record off of an Xbox 360, if you record it in SP, you're gonna get better quality than if you record in like I think extended EXP or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Because you can either have 6 hours on a tape or you can have 2 hours on a tape, and blah blah blah. The next film that we're going to talk about is The Exorcist, which is one of the scariest films of my childhood. I watched it countless times with my dad, and I think every time I watched it, I got more and more fucking scared. I was especially scared by the beginning, how it was in Iraq, and it was just like it looked fucking spooky, and there's like the shot of that guy like banging the hammer like a blacksmith kind of guy, just freaky, man. And everything about that old man and his little jar of pills was just fucking freaked me out, man. There's definitely scenes in this movie that are scary that involve Reagan to me, but I think the majority of the film that haunted me when I was a kid was just everything with like Father Karras and like his that scene where like he's having the dream or whatever and he sees his mom going down the subway stairs. Like it's so fucked up, man. Like, and the thing is about this film also, my dad had me convinced when I was a kid that The Exorcist is like a real thing that can happen and probably could happen to me. And like, he's like, gotta be careful. And I'm just like, dude, I'm 4, you know, Jesus Christ. Like I've talked about it before in the past, but my dad, like there was no restrictions on watching movies with him. He did not care. He always let it be known that it was all make believe, right? But certain movies and certain stupid shows, like for instance, not stupid shows, but like The Exorcist, he had me convinced it was real. He had me convinced some of those like ghost shows on TV are real, like you know how like they have like those ghost hunter shows and like they have the stupid little cutaways that are you know, dramatizations of what of the events that occurred, and that stuff just haunted me because he's like, this is real stuff, man. Look at the fucking beginning of the show. It says based on true events. They wouldn't lie. And I'm like, now I'm like, Jesus Christ. But back then, it was no fucking joke. So, The Exorcist, one of the most scary scenes to me involving Reagan is when she's like swearing and all that shit and like fucking like making the mom like, you know, doing what they do. Like it's fucked, man. And you got to think like 1973, like there was some hardcore shit out there prior to 1973, but released on like a wide, like this is a Warner Brothers motion picture we're talking about, where the fucking daughter's possessed by a demon making the mom eat her fucking cunt. Like it's fucked, you know. Like the only movie I can think of that's more hardcore right now off the top of my head from an earlier age is like Color Me Blood Red, or like Blood Feast or something like that, because those movies came out in the 60s, I believe, middle 60s, I want to say. We're not going to get into that right now. Of course, the iconic poster that you see, like when you think of The Exorcist, like with the man in front of the fucking house. I actually got to see that poster, an original print of it, at the Kirk Hammett It's Alive horror exhibit at the ROM. It was fucking cool, but it's spooky. It's one of those images, kind of like in Halloween, where Michael Myers is looking up into Laurie Strode's window. I get the same kind of vibes from that. And William Friedkin created a masterpiece, cinema monster that will go down in history as one of the greatest. As you can see, I'm kind of following a trend with this video. I'm trying to go for like stuff that is fucking awesome. You know what I mean? And that's what I want to do with this new series, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Just kind of go through a couple of movies and talk about them, because and talk about some stinkers, of course, stinkers like Grampire and shit like that. But moving on to our next film, we're actually going to skip. I have been going chronologically in order in terms of the release date of these films: Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, The Exorcist in 1973. But now we're going to jump to 1983, but then we will make a return to 1976. And if you know me and you know your timelines and shit, you might know what the film is. But the film we're about to talk about is Oliver Stone penned, Brian De Palma directed Scarface, starring Al Pacino. Holy shit. I watched this movie with my grandma. Like, my grandma, who's just passed 12, 13 years ago, like a couple of days ago was like the anniversary, but I watched so many classic films with her. And I might have mentioned this before, but I watched Planet of the Apes, the one with Mark Wahlberg, which I do really like that film. I also watched King Kong, the one with Jack Black with her, X-Men, like a lot of like those kind of movies. But we watched Scarface, we watched Godfather, and it's like when I watch Scarface, I'm thinking of my grandma, which is totally fucked, but I love it. And I think Scarface is one of these characters. Tony Montana is one of these characters, along with his friend Manny, and that is my biggest gripe with the film. But I think at that point, like, I don't think that Tony would have died if Manny had have, you know, came with him. But it's up for debate, and me and my buddies have had countless conversations about this. Like, Manny was arguably the fan favorite character of that film, and it goes for me in a way to a certain extent. Like, I love Tony, and I even love like Chi-Chi, who's like the little short dude. Like, he gets blown away in the mansion at the end. Like, this movie is meant, it's like made for adults, you know what I mean? Like, these are like adult films. Like, when I was a kid, I was watching like the Chucky films and all those, and those are horror films, but they're meant for like a teenage audience, like 17 through like 25 or whatever the fuck. But movies like, say, like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Scarface, Exorcist, and even the next picture we're gonna talk about, they are just totally adult films. So one of my favorite. I gotta list a few scenes from Scarface because it's a fucking long film. The scene in the bathroom with the chainsaw, I love that. I think it's fantastic. I love everything about it. Like from the beginning of the deal, it feels kind of sour, and it's like, it's tense right from the get go, and something fucked up is gonna happen. And then once shit does go sour, and you see that chainsaw come out, it's like, holy fuck! Like there's as much skin contact with chainsaw as there is in Texas Chainsaw Massacre with this film, and it's about 9,000 times more gruesome and violent in that scene alone. Like, fuck me. When, like, if you know the scene, then you know how graphic it gets. Like, his buddy Angel Fernandez, he gets the fucking chainsaw the worst, like right in the head. Like, he's the only one that gets it, but he gets it in the head, gets it in the arm. Like, you see the fucking blood splatter everywhere. The place is a mess. One thing I always thought of in the film, I don't know if there's like a deleted scene or anything like that, but imagine seeing like the body parts in the bathroom. Like, what did they do with the body parts? Are they in the fucking tub with Tony? Like, it sicks me out thinking about it. But another great scene, of course, is a scene within the nightclub where Tony is just fucked up, and I think it's who is it? The Diaz brothers. I think it's the Diaz brothers come in and they try to assassinate Tony, and that's what basically leads to Tony becoming the boss, because from there, after this attempted assassination, he goes to his old boss Frank. Basically, there's the famous thing where he gets a buddy to call Frank at this certain time and say, we fucked up, blah, 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 he got away. So when Tony's sitting there confronting this guy, the guy gets the call and makes it out like it's not from him, and it's like, that Tony's got him by the balls, right? And it's so satisfying to see that guy go down, because I don't mind Frank, what's his name, Frank Loggia, or something like that. I like that actor. I think he's awesome. But I like him so much. He plays a son of a bitch, and it's great. But to see him go down is awesome, and to see that cocksucker cop who may or may not even been a cop. Like, that's one thing about the film that's kind of up for debate with me. Like, that guy says he's a cop and all that stuff, and then Tony's like, "Whoever said you was a cop?" And the guy's like, "Wait a minute!" Like, all that shit is just, I love it. I'm fucking obsessed, man. I think those two scenes are only. I think they're as good as this final scene I want to talk about, but they're maybe not. And my final scene I want to talk about is the scene where Tony and Omar, they go down to meet Sosa for the first time. Everything from where he first meets Sosa to the end, I love it. I think it's crazy. It shows how much power Sosa has. I love how he's like English. He's like English educated, but he's like a coke dealer, so he's like got like intellect. And I mean, I'm sure there's some coke dealers out there with intellect and coke dealers that read books and shit, but you can tell this guy like reads books and books without pictures. But love it, man. Alex Sosa is another underrated character, underrated villain rather. And even the dude that ends up shooting Tony Montana in the back, because Tony was gonna die regardless in that film. Like, he got shot to shit, but the final blast of the shotty to the back is what put him over into the fountain. But like, that guy's he's peppered in throughout the film. I think you see him like twice throughout the film, and he's very interesting. He's always wearing those shades and just looks like a badass. I wonder what his, like, if there was any kind of more scenes written with that character in mind, because I'd love to hear them or love to read them. That's another cool thing about reading scripts and stuff. You see stuff, or you get to experience stuff that didn't happen in the film, but you can imagine it within your head. That's the glory of reading, kids. The final film we're going to talk about is from 1976, and it is a classic. And before I begin talking about this film, I just watched a documentary by its creator. Spoiler alert for the film, anyway. Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver is the film we're going to talk about, but I just have to say this because I just watched it recently. He did a documentary in 1974 called Italian American. It's about 20 minutes long, and it's essentially 20 minutes of him having a conversation with his parents, like in the 70s, and pre-Taxi Driver, pre-Raging Bull, all that shit. Like, this is like just when he's like an up-and-coming filmmaker. Like, he had made Mean Streets at this point, I believe, but other than that, nothing else. So, and just listening to his parents' conversations, it's interesting as fuck, and I highly recommend you check that shit out. But on to the feature, and that is Taxi Driver. Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel, the dad from the fucking Ray Romano show. I forget that guy's name. Peter Boyle, I believe is his name. And the thing is, I'm glad that I remembered his name because Peter Boyle has one of my favorite scenes in the film with Travis Bickle, and that's where they're outside of the diner talking about kind of Travis's debacle, so to speak. You know what I mean? And he's like, he like you can tell that this wizard guy, because his name's Wizard in the movie, like you can tell he's got knowledge and wisdom, and like, but he kind of second guess himself. But he knows, like he explains everything, and Travis just kind of goes like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then even Wizard says back to him like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, kind of thing. And it's just such a powerful scene, and I love it. And De Niro's like totally on edge the whole scene. You can just feel it. You can feel his like almost like him shaking. It's insane. And like De Niro does such a good job, and he actually nailed it in like the scenes that people remember, like the scene where like he's got the mohawk and he's clapping like you talking to me, all that kind of stuff. Like those scenes are great, but like these scenes of this movie to me is the scene where he first murders that guy in the variety store holdup, or the bodega holdup. I talked about that recently in a video. I fucking love that scene. Another underrated scene in that is when he's just driving around, and when he first goes into the diner and all the pimps are sitting there, and there's a slow motion shot, and it's so scummy, it's so New York. And ever since I was a kid, like when I think of New York, I think of Taxi Driver, and like my buddy goes to New York all the time, and he's like, bro, it's not like that no more. It's not even like how it was in fucking Strapped in the 90s. So I guess my version of New York in my head is fucking Gandhi. But Martin Scorsese nailed it with this film. Martin Scorsese's appearance in this film is phenomenal, and one of the most scary moments in the film, if you ask me. Even scarier than like the fucking 12-year-old prostitute being like taken back out on the streets when she's trying to get into a cab and get away. Like, would that shit happen nowadays? I don't fucking think so. Worse shit happens nowadays, to be quite frank. But you know what I'm getting at. One of the scenes where, or the one scene where he gets Iris in like at the diner, and like the lead up to that where he like goes to like buy her as a prostitute, and he ends up convincing her like, let me take you out for like breakfast and we'll talk or whatever. And like that whole interaction is really interesting to watch. Yeah, so I'm gonna wrap this video up. I appreciate anybody that's watching. I just have a quick couple pieces of information. I did open up a Facebook page, so if you want to go ahead and Facebook search Bluntzilla Video, all one word. Give it a follow, give it a like, whatever it is. I've been posting shit. I haven't posted anything in like 2 days, but I'm gonna get back on that, and with more videos and shit coming in for the new year. So I definitely appreciate anybody that goes ahead and does that, and thanks for the continued support over the years, and expect more videos very shortly. Bluntzilla Video. Adios. I'm gonna end this with I'm just gonna point at a random film. Okay, let's go like this. Pulling it out. Hopefully it doesn't fucking fall. Darkness Falls. So is this the Tooth Fairy film? Yes. Okay. This movie's about the Tooth Fairy. I don't remember it being that fucking great, to be honest with you, but maybe you like it. Thanks. It's kind of a shitty ending, I guess. Fuck it.